Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com.
The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network.
Welcome back, everyone, to All Security Weekly. This is the security news. I have a live read for Recorded Future. Don't I have their actual read? Isn't it on paper somewhere? Yeah. I'll do... Well, the other announcement's InfoSec World. So InfoSec World is going to be really great. We're going to go to Disney World. It's going to be awesome. April 1st through the 3rd.
It's always fun.
If we show up early, can we go with your family to Disney World too?
Absolutely, provided you have your own Disney passes. You may come to Disney World with me. More than happy to have company.
Not a problem. I want to ride the teacups with you.
You can ride teacups. We usually do It's a Small World, Jeff. It's awesome.
Yes.
You have to do lots of shots before it's a small world.
Oh, yes.
Like tequila
Not
shots.
before the teacups, though.
Oh, no, I thought you did shots during the teacups.
No. It's infosecworld.misty.com. Come to InfoSec World. Come to Disney World with us. OS 19-Sec Week is your discount code. You save 15% off. Now, I would like to read about our dear friends at Recorded Future. They help security teams make more confident decisions faster. Recorded Future's technology automates broad collection and analysis of cyber threat data and delivers the rich external context you need to understand alerts and emerging threats. With real-time threat intelligence from Recorded Future, security teams respond to threats 63% faster and find undetected threats 10 times quicker. To get started, make sure you go to recordedfuture.com/security weekly. Sign up for their Recorded Future Cyber Daily, which is awesome because it gives you the information you need every day to your inbox, especially if you're doing this kind of thing. Every day, you will receive an email with the top results for trending, technical indicators, cyber news, exploited vulnerabilities, suspicious IP addresses, and more. Sounds like something I really need to subscribe to as well. I think I did, actually.
I already did, yeah.
Subscribe today. Stay ahead of those cyber attacks. Like I said, if you are working in a SOC as a SOC analyst, that would be something
or even
of a requirement, like just a free thing
like
to get.
A great thing to glance over when you just to see what's there. And
Absolutely.
And I love those those bad IPs, so it gets you obsessed, and you have to get in there and blacklist all those babies.
Yeah, because you read that stuff and you're like,
I gotta go. Oh my God,
is that in my network? That's not in my network.
Well, yeah, when you see yourself in the list.
Yeah. Oh, wait, that's my IP.
Hey,
shit.
Just blacklisted myself.
Shit.
Yeah.
Do I have to read Extra Hop too? No.
You better.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I think
I
you
do
should.
have to read it.
I
Hold
definitely
on.
think you should.
I'm rewinding.
It says,
Hold on.
Paul, please read.
It does. Registration is now open for the first Security Weekly webcast of 2019. This one's going to be really awesome. We had the prep call today, and Matt is one of the people from Extra Hop, and him and I were nerding out like already. So like basically, it's going to be a network security nerd fest. It's called Rise Above Complex Workflows, Practical Ways to Accelerate Incident Response with Extra Hop. You can go to securityweekly.com/webcasts. That's our new URL to register for any of our webcasts. securityweekly.com/webcasts. Write it down, tattoo it on your arm or something. But that's going to be a great webcast with Extra Hop.
You got to put Henry Rollins on there as a lead in. It's Rise Above.
Right.
Rise above.
So securityweekly.com/ what was that, Doug? Webcasts.
Webcast.
/webcasts. Yes.
I didn't know there was going to be a test.
You're a professor. You should. Oh.
I don't take tests. I give them.
Oh, right.
He doesn't grade them either.
That's right. I just throw them on the steps.
Time to top off Doug's drink. You clearly need the refill.
I do, yes. It's getting slow in here.
Yes. Let's get to some stories, which I wasn't
Hey,
really.
Can I do a quick announcement
Yes.
before we get to stories?
Please do.
I just want to point out that today, February 7th, is International Bring Light to Slavery Day. If you want to find out more, go to enditmovement.com. It's in the show notes, but it's all about world slavery and bringing awareness to it so it can be ended. Thank you.
It's interesting. There's a day all the time. It's sometimes important issues, such as the one Jeff mentions. Other times it's like
Daffodil
National
Day.
National like chocolate cake day or something. I don't know.
Well, there's several organizations that there's many organizations involved in trying to end slavery. A lot of it has to do with sex trafficking and especially minors. And the busiest day of the year for them is actually the Super Bowl in the city in which the Super Bowl is hosted.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough. Yep.
Um,
So public service announcement, and now you have a chance to say something about the Patriots, Paul, because I brought up the Super Bowl.
I wasn't gonna. I mean, we won. Just awesome. Number 6.
Paul was on the blimp.
That's right. It was.
Where do they put the blimp at night? In a blimp hanger?
I thought it like deflates and it goes in like
They
someone's pocket.
put it in a closet.
Like what? Some guy like pulls a little plug on it and stands there like.
Yeah. It's the behind the scenes.
9 hours later.
So we were drinking. I'll have some more. How about that? Some
Tawny Sandeman Tawny Port.
Tawny Port.
Mm-hmm.
They are wines usually made from red grapes.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure. And that are aged in wooden barrels, exposing them to gradual oxidation and evaporation.
Yep.
Is that? I'm ignorant here. Is that not how they make regular wine? Don't they?
It is.
Ferment it in.
But port, they put something in it. I think they put other port in it, and that makes it turn.
Usually with brandy.
Oh, they
Yeah,
put
right.
brandy in it.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
Which is distilled wine.
Yes.
It's a blend.
Huh.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
If you scroll up from all of our memes, Lee posted a
that's what I'm reading from,
description.
Jeff. It says when it's described as tawny, without an indication of age, which this is, no indication of age, right?
Non-vintage.
All right, let's see what. Hold on, I lost my place now, and I can't see because I'm old. Although on this show I'm the youngin' of the group. It's a basic blend of wood-aged port that has spent time in wooden barrels. Isn't that what we just?
Yeah, it's like, but it's
we just described. It all sounds so. How's it different from wine?
It
This
is
description,
wine.
but this okay. But what makes it a port versus a wine?
It's just I don't know something about
It's
the way
a
it's distilled.
fortified
I
wine.
guess.
It's the type of grape and the fact that it's more usually a sweeter wine, more of a dessert wine.
Right.
That's all.
And that it's fortified with the brandy.
With the brandy.
With brandy.
See, it doesn't
Yeah.
say in your description they put brandy in it though.
Well, there's brandy's the most common. There are other spirits that can be added.
I gotcha.
And then you also get vintage, like you'll get a 20-year Tawny Port, which is going to be really mellow. Whereas the non-vintage one, it's a blend of different ports, whatever the winemaker thought would taste good, which is usually a good bet.
I like it. I'm digging it.
It's good.
I'm digging it.
And I mean, we usually drink like Ripple and Night Train, so it's quite an improvement.
No, we don't. We drink some decent.
No,
wines.
we've had good wine.
Anyway.
Hey, Lee, why don't you share a story with us?
Yes, please do. Save it.
Jeff's wanting to move on.
Move on.
So there was I wanted to touch on my last one just because it's been in the news so much. You know, they finally released the updates for the FaceTime flaws. iOS 12.1.4, OS X 10.14.3 supplemental update. That's a mouthful. I was doing testing earlier today, and group FaceTime is still disabled on those, but it's supposedly fixed. It's disabled at the server still. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And the other thing, I thought of Joff with my number 4 story. There was a remote code execution flaw in Libreoffice and Openoffice, and it's basically exploiting the Python file parser, and you can pass it parameters and all kinds of stuff. And right now, Libreoffice has a patch. Openoffice does not, but in both cases, you can disable it by getting rid of the Python parser. And I just kind of disappointed that they had that exploit in there. But then again, we all know pen testers that love to put macros in documents as part of testing.
Yep.
And last I read, Openoffice had not patched that flaw,
No.
but Libreoffice did.
Hmm.
Ouch.
So like I said, if you don't need the macros, turn it off.
Yeah. But people don't.
Did a couple of us have stories about 5G? I thought I saw, Lee, you had a...
Lee does.
Yeah, and I have where the U.S. Senator said that 5G networks must be secured from bad actors. I said hackers earlier. It says the U.S. will need to implement a strategy to protect 5G technology from hackers and state-sponsored bad actors, according to U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell at the 5G hearing. I don't understand what makes 5G so different that all of a sudden we're demanding that it be secure.
It's one more than 4G.
Well, yeah. What makes 5G 5G?
Marketing.
Right?
Well, no, and it's based on Lee's story where there's some flaws and vulnerabilities being discovered in terms of, it said something about the protocols used by 5G versus 4G or 3G. And I'm just curious because I don't know. I should do the research. But what is it that makes 5G 5G, and is it partially tied to protocols? I would think that the protocols would just sort of elevate up, that it's more of a lower level, hardware technology that's creating 5G, or processing power or something. I don't know. Does anybody know?
No one really knows much about 5G at this point, I think, in general.
Right.
I'm always
Except
afraid
there's a
it's
lot
just
of-
marketing.
A lot of concern about using Huawei components to implement 5G for various security reasons.
This
And
says
now
it's widely believed to be smarter, faster, and more efficient than 4G. But they don't say why that is.
5.
Low latency.
Low latency, high speed,
Is
low
this like-
latency.
I'm reading this from Buzzword Daily.
Yeah, so the general theory is that due to the limitations of latency and spotty performance of 4G, that 5G is more like a Wi-Fi connection on your phone rather than a cellular mobile data connection, which, as we all have experienced, can be kind of...
Well, that's what I read, was that this does push the speeds way on up to more like Wi-Fi, local, like LAN type speeds on your phone, which 4G is pretty damn close. I mean, in terms of, production, it's not effective speeds, but it's not actual speeds, but effectively it's
I
really
updated
fast.
my wireless at home. It's back to our conversation we were having earlier, and it's a brand new like AC access point Ubiquity, and I did the speed test on my phone, and I got like pinned 100 meg up, 100 meg down to the internet, and I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive for a phone.
Yeah.
And then I got to thinking, if my cabling is really all at least 5E, I could probably get more. So I'm like, crap, off to Amazon, order some more Cat. I'm just going to do Cat. Should I do what? Is it Cat 7 that does 10 gig?
Cat 6.
Cat 6E?
Cat 6E will do
Cat
10 gigs.
6E. Was just what you said before, right?
6E.
Hey, I Googled it and I got a partial answer. It says 5G networks use a type of encoding called OFDM, which is similar to encoding in 4G, and it's the encoding that reduces latency and makes it faster. So again, that doesn't sound like protocols to me. That sounds like sort of underlying things that, why would there be new vulnerabilities that are unique to 5G? It's a curiosity.
So the thing that got me on this one is that with 4G and 5G, and I guess 3G does it too, they're using encryption keys to keep the conversation privacy, so that your phone call going over the air is less likely to be intercepted. And what they're finding is the way the keys are managed, you could intercept or get in the middle, and there goes your privacy. I think it's a concern not so much as it's 5G, is that more and more business is being done on cell phone, and people have an expectation that even though it's using a radio signal that could be captured, that it's encrypted and nobody else can tell what they're saying. Slight sarcasm in that comment, I understand, but I think that's why it's got focus.
Yeah, I think that what I'm reading about and hearing about 5G is that faster, more reliable, lower latency, and has not solved any of the security issues or privacy issues really to prevent snooping that exist today in other mobile protocols.
Yeah, I agree.
I gave you the Wi-Fi password, but you're not in the Slack channel, Doug.
I know.
I need your help in
my
there.
My battery's almost done.
I need your help in there.
Next.
Yeah, I guess I was tripping up on the use of the word protocol in this article because it's not. I don't think it's the protocol. Like, it's not a new protocol. It's the protocols that they're using, which it sounds like it's probably the same as 4G, and it's an implementation of key management. That makes sense. Thank you, Lee.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
The zero-day vulnerability highlights the responsible disclosure dilemma. So here's what happened. Trustwave Spider Labs found a zero-day vulnerability in a video conferencing system and responsibly disclosed that. The response from the manufacturer / software developers was, our developers are aware of some known vulnerabilities with the systems. Development for these devices has slowed significantly as they are end of life. For those devices that are still under support, we may target future releases. This was written by a true product manager.
Oh, yeah.
Although, not to steal the thunder, that reminded me of, there was an aspect to the Apple story that I thought was really cool, and I apologize for going backwards, but Apple is going to pay a bug bounty to the high schooler who discovered the vulnerability in FaceTime like a week before anybody else.
Yay! I was wondering about that.
I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wondering about that as we had moved on from the Apple story. Good for him.
Yay.
Yeah, and I saw another story on a similar event where somebody was trying to report a vulnerability. I wish I could remember the details, but basically the help desk was saying, hey, ain't a problem here, and it turned out to be a big deal 2 weeks later. So I think companies are hopefully wising up to bug reports coming in from all kinds of channels and treating them legitimately. Maybe I'm naive.
So back to
0 days.
Back to 0 days. So the company is called LifeSize, makes video conferencing systems. Shodan shows there are 372 life-size devices, this is interesting, in universities around the world. The LifeSize website claims tens of thousands of organizations around the world use LifeSize. Why are the Shodan numbers specific to universities, but the company's website says across the world and makes no distinction?
Because if universities are public entities, you could get that information, and you can't get.
No, that's Shodan, so that's scan data.
It's because education is universal.
Maybe because universities didn't block the scan.
That could be. I would think they weren't not the only ones. Not blocking the scan, but
I have no idea. That's a strange thing. Of course, that's marketing versus reality. It's like we have tens of thousands of customers, and scans show 372.
Essentially, it's multiple command injection flaws, which are trivial to exploit. And oh my god, input. That's it. I'm done with this story. User input is passed direct to the PHP shell _exec function. I'm done. I'm done.
But Paul, the title of the article was talking about the dilemma of disclosing 0 day vulnerabilities.
Okay, yes,
ahead of the patch becoming available. Which, this is maybe an egregious example, but I think it's a fair question to ask.
But what do you do though? If you keep it to yourself and say, "Well, I don't want to risk a lawsuit from the company. I don't want to seem like the bad person going after the company. I don't want to make it public and cause harm to the public or greater good. I'll just keep it to myself." But if you keep it to yourself, or you don't pursue with the company's clearly not interested in fixing it or overly enthusiastic about fixing it, which means, they pretty much said in their statement that for stuff that's end of life, we ain't fixing it.
Yeah.
And for stuff that's still supported, yeah, we might. maybe you get the product management answer. Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going
It's
to
like
ask.
what was that? No, what was the movie with Tom Hanks with the house, the Money Pit?
The Money Pit.
The Money
Shelley
Pit.
with Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, and he asked the contractors when you're gonna be done, and everyone says 2 weeks, and
Yeah,
it says 2 weeks
of
and 2
course.
weeks, and it's like 6 months later. That's essentially what's happening
In
here.
Italy, if you call down and go, my electric meter doesn't work, and they go, yeah, I'll come fix it tomorrow. It means maybe never.
Right.
But when they finally start saying I'll be there in 15 minutes, it means maybe sometime this week.
Yeah.
And, we learned that. But I had a question for you because I had a student ask me this question. I want to see what everybody thought. A student found a vulnerability in something, and he's a very smart student, and he wrote me and he said, how long is it considered appropriate to wait after you notify someone of a vulnerability before you go public with it?
You got to have your own policy on that.
Well, that's what I told him.
And it
Well, I
differs.
think mileage varies, but I think 3 strikes rule, 3 attempts at contact. I mean, he did have some response, and when the response was, "Yeah, we don't care." I mean,
that's for
I
sure.
don't have a problem going public after that because I think there is a certain amount of responsibility to the public at large.
Yeah, I told him, notify them, wait a few days. If you don't hear anything from them, like it's on them.
There are templates for if you discover a vulnerability and you're contacting the company. There's some pretty good ones out there, and usually they're along the lines of like got to make first initial contact, which can be difficult and take some time. So you don't want to necessarily start the clock, right? Make initial contact. Then there is typically some back and forth as you explain the bug and prove to them, send them exploit code, and they're like, no, we can't get it right work. Right? Like there's some back and forth. Oh, yes, we've acknowledged now that that's a vulnerability or not, whatever the case may be. Then they're typically the researcher going, well, I would, am going to go public with this in a certain timeline, unless maybe it's kind of difficult because you're giving the company an ultimatum, but you should give them a timeline, right?
Yeah.
And give them an opportunity to say, no, we need 3 months, right? Try and work that out is really the advice that I like to give, and that I've talked with several researchers about is give them a timeline. So like if you have your own timeline, you gotta not necessarily take it on a case by case basis, but if you're working with someone, give them the information and then say, how long do you need? Like, do you want to set a timeline? And if they say 3 months, but you like to publicly go forward with things after 30 days, then you're going to go with the 3 months, right? Now, when that 3 months is up, you got to be like, look, like I'm doing it, going public with it. It's been 3 months. This is what we agreed upon. They may come back and say we need another week. And it's up to you how patient, how many times. And I think a lot of researchers kind of get strung along on this until they finally go, no, I'm not holding us on any longer. Like at that point, it has a better chance of being fixed if it's publicly available and there's some public shame involved, customers that are upset. Maybe that pushes the time frame forward in the best case, or maybe the company just never fixes it. So
or they don't respond at all.
In
this case, they he got in touch with them, they responded, and it was all handled. But it was just one of those things where I was like, well, I don't know.
And I'm sure TrustWave has a policy.
Is the ATM giving you money right now? Can I get down there before you call them? Yeah.
And there's a difference between public announcement and releasing of proof of concept code too.
True. Yeah,
Although with this
absolutely.
vulnerability, all you have to say is PHP shell exec, and people are going to just go find it.
And this is all old
Cat's
stuff.
out of
What's
the bag
interesting, to go back to the Apple bug, the FaceTime thing, we're talking about researchers finding a vulnerability and reporting it to the companies. Compare and contrast that with a 14-year-old kid that went to his mom, and together they tried to figure out how to get in touch with Apple. And I think, if I recall, they initially called support or something like that. Not that it's an everyday occurrence that somebody just stumbles upon a vulnerability that isn't doing the research, but it is interesting that the kid found something that he recognized. It was he and his friends recognized that was a big deal, and he was persistent about it, and something finally happened. I wonder what Apple's response would have been if the initial contact had been from, for example, the same guy from TrustWave, Spider Labs, who probably knows who to contact at Apple to get the message across.
Yeah, I think that has a big effect on it. It's who's calling. I mean, if a big time, yeah, you're right. I think I agree with you, Jeff, because if you're
who's calling or knowing who to call,
and yeah, calling the help desk is not going to get you very far. You have to kind of sort through that, and that can be an arduous process where they're going, I have no idea.
Oh, yeah. To answer your question, Doug, from earlier, TrustWave has a policy on this very similar to the one I've outlined, and they say we will hold the proof of concept for 2 weeks until Thursday, February 21st, in order to give users a chance to apply the hotfix. So apparently there is a hotfix. At that time, we will release the proof of concept code to provide users, administrators, and network security professionals with the technical details and tools to validate whether they are still vulnerable. This POC will be added directly to the advisory.
There you go.
And that's what I said. Sometimes you do that public announcement in collaboration with the company whose product you found a vulnerability in, sometimes not. But you make that announcement first to let everyone know there's a really bad vulnerability here. Or, I mean, bad is on a scale that we arbitrarily get to determine sometimes. And then say, I'm not going to release the secret sauce, like make it easy for people to build into their scripts. Sure, if you're looking at one of these products, most of us would probably be able to figure out how this works. There is a privilege escalation vulnerability built into there that he builds upon as well. But that's, to answer your question, Doug, that's a similar model of to how it works.
I agree.
So,
just wanted to get that out there.
And there's lots of companies and organizations that could help you with that.
Right.
And that's not a 100% guarantee. Sometimes people go to certain other organizations that handle exploits and their mileage varies. Some people are like, yeah, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yep.
That's, no one's going to fix that bug or whatever the case is, right? They look at it and say it's not severe enough, or we're not interested in helping you with that particular organization for whatever the reason. But a lot of times you do get success, and they do help people.
I think companies are getting better set up for that kind of thing too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was really bad when we first started the show.
Yeah, they're just
14 years ago was really bad.
Yeah, because they had no idea what to do. There was nobody there that knew what to do with it, and they're going to refer you to legal or something, and they're going to say...
Most of the time you didn't even know who to email. And forget it, even earlier than 15 years, it fell on deaf ears. Like, people didn't even... Like, in the days of the loft, they were... It was like people were like,
what?
What's a security vulnerability? I don't know what you're talking about, right? And they really paved the way. Loft was one of the groups early on, I think, that helped raise awareness about how to handle reports of bugs, security vulnerabilities in your product. And it's still evolving today.
So
I'm just yammering.
Thinking about this.
It's my job. I get paid to yammer. So
Well, let Lee yammer.
go ahead.
I yammer what I
I
yammer.
passed the yammering torch.
So
to Lee.
I was thinking about these video conferencing systems that people have, or there's other, office type equipment like that are expensive, and you get it in a small business and it's not supported. There's no patch. How likely are they to fork over another $5,000 for a brand new device, or just let it rip and say, well, nobody cares about me. I'll just hope they don't hack me.
Yeah, with this particular technology, Lee, it's dangerous because, in my experience, and I don't know what it's like today, but in my experience, largely, these were the devices we're either putting outside the firewall or opening up all kinds of ports to, because in like enterprise level or professional level, which is what we were talking about for the show actually last week, these devices make direct connections to each other. Yep. Which is why, and Lee brings up a great point, I think they're exposed to the internet, because in order to have a 4K quality call between Doug and I on either side of the world, I can't be going through multiple firewalls, proxies, routers, caching servers, like even Zoom that we're using tonight in Skype, I believe work pretty similar in the fact that you connect up to their servers broker their connection, so you don't have to open up ports between them. But once you get into... I can't remember the name of the company. We had it at Brown.
You mean like Polycom?
Yes, thank you, Polycom. See, Lee can also read minds among his other many talents. Polycom gear, for example, needs to make those direct connections. I actually had Polycom gear that I found on a pen test. And that was fun, because if you got people on site, what makes for a great report when you hack into any of their video systems is to have either yourself, if you can pull that off, or someone else stand in front of the camera and wave while you take the screenshots that you use in the report. They're so much more impactful.
Well, a lot of those old
That is
systems
freaking
too.
Awesome.
A lot of those old security systems were designed with two things. One was flat networks.
Yep.
So there was no security equipment in those networks.
Well,
and two,
any jump, Doug, as you well know, creates more latency potentially.
And also just the fact that at the time a lot of this stuff was designed and conceptualized, there was no internet.
Right.
I mean, so
Not even potentially. Every hop does add latency.
It does.
Whether it's how impactful it is.
the actual
is-
wire causes anytime you unfurl the twisted
Oh,
pairs.
tell me about the physics, Doug. I'm so
you
turned on right now.
When
You're talking about unfurling.
when you
You're talking
unfurl
about
those
I want to
curls,
unfurl my clothes when you talk like that.
every time you unwrap those twisted pairs, you immediately introduce latency into your network.
Oh, that's interesting. It's the unraveling of the twisted pairs.
I mean,
that-
just the fact that you unravel it to put it into the RJ45
Yes.
creates latency right there.
you know, that makes sense because the cable that we had going for one of our internet connections was
Completely unwrapped.
Well, first it was a cable that you're not supposed to crimp an end on certain types of cable. You're supposed to crimp it into a patch. Well, there was an end crimped on it. That end went into the receptacle that you would either put in a patch panel or a jack. There was a cable plugged into that one. I think that cable ran up in the ceiling and plugged into another receptacle that was punched down directly into a cable that then went into an end into the thing, and it would not do. It was 5E, most of it. Maybe all of it was 5E. It wouldn't negotiate the gig at all.
This
Because
week
of-
on Egregious Latency Theater, the great unraveling.
So, but what you're saying is because we had it even unravels when it goes into an end. And
Even
RJ,
if it's done very well, it's still some of it's unraveled. It's just how much of it. So you see these really awful cables where they've unraveled like a whole bunch. That makes it worse because now you're introducing EMI and all this other kind of stuff. So
because it's outside the shielding.
outside the shielding. And when you unwrap the wraps are what cancels out the EMI.
I think I'm experiencing latency because the segment's unraveling, personally.
This is interesting, Jeff.
It's interesting to you, maybe, but it's ancient history to perhaps
Well,
others.
usually stuff that's interesting to me interests at least one other listener of this show.
Yeah, Doug.
Okay, well, the opinion from the nursing home has been heard. So,
Get off the latency!
here, kids, get off my unraveled porch, and all of you.
10 minutes till lights out.
These kids and their unraveled networks.
7:20.
Tell you what.
Back in my day, we didn't worry about the velocity factor and the latency on the wire. We just worried that it worked.
We had 1 kilobit and we liked it.
That message that you attached to the
overkill.
swallow was, wait, was that an African swallow or?
A European swallow.
It had to be African because of the weight of the coconut.
It doesn't matter when he grips it.
And it had to be distributed between 2 Africans.
That's right.
Oh boy. All right, let's find a story fast.
Are you saying coconuts are migratory?
Video
Let's
chat
talk
tools.
about the National Museum of Computing.
Let's do that.
That's a cool article.
Have you been there,
I have.
Jeff? Have you guys been
I
there?
have not, but I actually had some cousins visiting this past weekend that are from England, and we were talking about planning a trip for my wife and I to go over to England, probably next summer 2020, and Bletchley Park is top of the list of things to do once I get over there. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You should definitely check it out. It's really cool. It's really cool. They have all the original bombs and all that stuff.
Bletchley Park. Refresh my memory. That's where touring was, right?
Yep.
In
England.
in Britain,
In
then,
London,
right?
yeah.
Bomb to break
Great
the
Britain
Enigma
even.
encryption.
Great Britain, even. That's really cool. So that's where the national. Oh, so it's Bletchley Park's National Museum of Computing is exhibiting the decrypted, essentially, messages that was broken by the Colossus machines.
Yeah, they found out all
Was
the
that Turing? Those were Turing's the machines that
he was
he built,
working on
right?
stuff.
Yeah.
And all the German messages said, "Schick mir Bier."
Translated too.
That means send more beer. If you didn't know.
Thanks for that, Doug. You're so multilingual.
Well, it's
when this-
interesting from a cryptologic perspective
Yes,
to geek out for a minute, but the systems that they were breaking were assumed to be unbreakable because of the compute. Well, there wasn't such a thing as computing power back then. It was assuming people with paper and pencils and slide rules were trying to do all these calculations that it was just impossible effectively. One of the stories I like to tell when I give talks every once in a while is when I first started at the National Security Agency back in the mid 80s. I'll usually put up a slide showing the Enigma machine, which is obviously one of the machines that the Colossus was breaking. That's what Turing was all about. But when I first started working at the NSA in 1986, it was still classified that the Enigma machine had been broken.
Wow.
And that's because it was still being used.
Wow.
And it was broken back in the 30s. And it wasn't revealed to have been broken until like 88 or 89. So just wrap your head around the type of security and privacy that went into protecting that kind of a secret, that Allied powers had broken a system that was effectively used for about 50 years.
Wow. Then one of the things that helped break the code was the fact that they said Heil Hitler in every message, right? So you had some plain text and some ciphertext, right?
Yeah, once they knew that every single order ended with Heil Hitler, it really gave them a huge clue.
It was actually at the beginning.
Well, wherever it was.
Was it the beginning, Jeff? Yeah.
It was the beginning. It was known plain text, so they had multiple messages they knew what the first couple characters or words, decrypted to, and that helped them cut down the. It was a lot easier to try one. Does it match all the others rather than try one, all the brute force combinations? So it's a cryptographic technique that has to do with known underlying plain text. It basically takes the brute force, whatever the number was, it was gazillions, down to something that was workable. They were actually doing it by hand, and they could do it in several days.
And then
which was usually sometimes there were messages like "Let's go bomb this city" or something like that. So, but the Colossus machine sped up the process, and to the point where they were, it was useful. They could get the information out and actually respond to it.
Because the key was rotated.
It changed every day.
It was it was very dramatically portrayed in the movie, which I thought was a great movie, The Imitation Game, which is really funny because like friends and family will just talking about movies they saw, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we saw this one." Paul, what was that movie, Paul, with the computer guy? But the like inventing. I'm like, The Imitation Game, Alan Turing. They're like, yeah. How did you know that? I'm like, cause it's Alan Turing. Like that's
right.
Good old Alan Turing.
That's so the two other things. If you don't want to run all the way to the UK, if you can get to the Cryptographic Museum at Fort Meade, there's a lot of cool stuff, including a bomb and Turing machines, and oh my goodness,
that's a cool one
awesome.
Too.
Technically, it's the Cryptologic Museum, and
thank you for that.
If you're coming there, let me know, and I'd be happy to join you because the things that I used to work on are actually in the museum.
Now, how far is that from Richmond, Virginia?
Probably about 3 hours.
Yeah, it's a long way. From
traffic
Richmond.
notwithstanding.
I'm trying to convince my oldest son to do some traveling with me because it falls around his birthday.
But it's not far from Baltimore. So if you want to go to Fort Meade, you just fly from here to Baltimore. It takes an hour, and then you can visit Jeff. You can go to the Gallery of Ancient Things and see the stuff there,
or just wait until that 3-letter government agency picks us up and takes us there.
Yeah.
On the government time?
It's
the Black Ops government?
It's actually on the grounds of the 3-letter agency. And you have to be careful which way you make the turn so you don't actually accidentally drive, to the guard posts.
But people if you do, be sure and ask them in Russian or Farsi, where the museum is. It's always helpful to have a really, really interesting experience. I mean,
while pointing your streaming video camera at
exactly.
the place, that'll really. So I was there in 2014 in an event set up by Ed Scotus, and Ed was like a kid in a candy store because he loves.
He has an Enigma machine.
Yes, he does.
He does. Yes.
Oh my God!
And he's got a really good presentation that explains the weaknesses of the Enigma he and Josh Wright did, called "Keep Your Brain Juice Off My Enigma Machine."
That's good.
It's a good story.
That's really awesome.
Well, I was there just about. I was there right before ShmooCon, so whatever that was, 3-4 weeks ago. Happy to give tours. I know a couple of the docents that volunteer their time there. It's actually just celebrated either the 20th or 25th anniversary. I think it's 25th anniversary, and they're actually building a new center. What's interesting is, well, I'm geeking out a little bit, but the Cryptologic Museum is housed in what used to be a motel, and the motel sat right outside of the National Security Agency for many, many years and was simply a motel. And at some point, I think before I started there, NSA actually bought it, and they kept running it as a motel for many years for all the visitors that would come. And at some point they stopped doing that, but they've kept it in the family, so to speak. And so it was the site of the Cryptologic Museum for many years. But they are under construction. They're building a brand new visitor center museum. It's going to be bigger and better than ever before. I'm not sure when they're expecting to have it open, but it's actively under construction. So probably in the next year or two, it should be opened up. And even more reason to come visit.
It's a cool place to go.
Yep.
This next article on what do successful pen testing attacks have in common. I'm somewhat befuddled by this report. They say it was based on the statistics were based on the results of 33 pen test projects. To me, that's not, first of all, a big enough sample size to glean any meaningful
Is this
data.
like somebody's dissertation or something?
And then they say attempts to breach the network perimeter and obtain access to land resources were successful in 92% of the external pen tests. I don't know how many of those 33 were external versus internal. Half of the companies were able to breach the network perimeter in one step. And the number one method was use of insecure data transfer protocols, which puzzles me.
Well, they don't define what a breach means. Does that mean they were able to ping something or what?
Is it? But usually it's phishing, right? Because then they list dictionary passwords, which, okay.
I wouldn't call insecure data transfer protocols phishing, though.
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying. Like,
but it could be a ping. Telnet.
I see.
I'm struggling to find who wrote the article or who, what is the source of the data.
I don't think anyone's
it's
claiming
a
it.
pen test company.
Is it from this ebook? Or that's
at the bottom.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
I found the name of the person.
A word of caution: make sure you got a big enough sample size to make claims and cite percentages. And I don't disagree that insecure data transfer protocols aren't are a problem. I don't know. Anyway, they say brute force attacks. I mean, essentially credentials on the internal network is what they're saying. That I buy. Failure to install updates, vulnerabilities to social engineering. So in the internal, they list specially crafted emails, but they don't rank them in vulnerable Wi-Fi networks. Very strange. What type of organization? I mean, if it was only 33 pen tests, it's just not a big enough.
I think it's a dangerous generalization.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, 33 is not a large number, despite the law of large numbers saying 30 is sufficient. But I mean, that's a misnomer.
Well, at the end of the day, the article links to the report, which is basically a white paper for this company. I don't even bother wanting to name them. So this is a marketing thing. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's a white paper marketing document written by the company.
Okay, good that we pointed it out. So what else we got? Jeff or Lee, your stories?
Well, I had a couple stories, and I didn't put up more, but you actually grabbed one. Apparently, this is the time of year where lots of statistical reports come out. I think part of it's probably because it's the beginning of the year, and part of it, I think, frankly, is the beginning of the build-up to RSA week. I had cited one that had to do with the title was "Fewer Breaches in 2018, but More Sensitive Data Was Spilled." So if you go to the article, there's a chart where the number of breaches reported went way down, but the number of compromised records and data is way up. A second one that I had to do with sort of tangentially, but I thought was interesting, was apparently, I think it's the Health and Human Services. They have a website where they post healthcare organizations that are breached, and they call it their wall of shame. So that was interesting. You had one about the GDPR has already recorded 59,000 breaches, which was interesting. I went to that article, and they had a table in by country, and far and away number one was the Netherlands. And I happened to be talking on Twitter DM earlier to Chris Kubeka at Sec Evangelism, who we interviewed, I don't know, a year and a half or two ago. She lives in Amsterdam, so she's in the Netherlands. And I'm like, what's up? Netherlands is like the worst offender by far. She had an interesting explanation, and she's actually thinking about writing a blog article, which we can put up here if she writes it in the next week or so. But basically, the Netherlands, they were some of the people that started writing the initial documents that became GDPR, the initial standards, but somehow they got behind in the curve in actually implementing the things that they were recommending.
Any other stories that look interesting, gentlemen?
Well, doubling back a minute, though. What do you? I'm sorry, Lee. I'm just interested in hearing people's impressions on the idea that you post a wall of shame of organizations that have suffered a breach. They also, I forget whether it was this article because I looked at many of them. They also are keeping track of fines that they levy against companies. And they were sort of advertising it as, this is how much we've recovered, or this is how much, I don't know where the money goes.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. Where does the money go?
But what do you think about, a wall of shame for healthcare organizations that are being breached? Or any type of organization for that matter.
I don't know. I mean, that's always a double-edged sword. You hate to do the shaming game in any situation, but sometimes the shaming game actually works pretty good. However, a public shaming game like this could give attackers an indication of which organizations to go pick on.
Right.
Not that, I don't know. I mean, I guess they could figure that out on their own. It would take a lot more work versus us publishing a list. So,
right.
I mean, I agree with you on double-edged sword. On the one hand, you get this list of organizations and find and say, look, this shit's real. You really will have consequences for failing to meet GDPR. But what about the reputation of those companies? I mean, whether they fix it or not, they're on this list that they were breached, and that could have some long-term consequences for them.
But if it's public information anyway, it's just a consolidation of stuff that's already out there. So if the information has been released already, just in a different form, I don't really have a big problem with it. If it's something where you're telling people before that, but if it's just government reports and somebody went through and consolidated them all and said, here's all the offenders, I mean, that's just like they do for like the worst airline in the world or whatever, and they say, here's the number of incidents or complaints, and somebody compiles it all together and says, oh, this one was ranked number one or whatever.
Yeah, and is that really, in the GDPR case, indicative of the security posture? Maybe, but it's not conclusive evidence.
No, it's not. So it's, I mean, I don't know that it's a huge issue for those companies if it's already public information. Now, if it's private information, that's another whole matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think then you've got legal people calling you going, why did you just put my company up as a target? And, I mean, you could still say that, but I think the defense is, but it was on this government list. I just took what was on the government site and published it over here.
Yeah.
So now it's just news.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then the question is why? What's the end game by publishing?
To get people to read the newspaper.
Well, I think they're trying to find ways to motivate companies to do something different, to actually change things.
I don't know. I think some of it could be like, oh, look, we're going to boycott those companies on the list, which in my mind largely doesn't work.
No. I mean, if you need something the company provides, you just use it.
You're going to
anyway.
use it anyway, right?
Right.
I
I mean, if there's 5 companies selling the same product at the same price, I might go, well, that one's better than this one because they're more secure. But really, it's like we need these grommets, and Bob's grommets, is the one selling them to us, and there's not 4 other grommet factories around, so we'll just buy them from Bob.
Right. Or
Well,
you could go to
what's
AliExpress
interesting-
and get them from China.
Well,
I guess,
yeah, that
suppose.
too.
What's interesting in the PCI world of breaches, it's been generally true since the beginning. I don't think it's changed a whole lot, but customers that I dealt with that either had gone through a breach or they're fearful of the breach. They always had the attitude, within whatever type of industry they were in, if they were a supermarket or if they were a hotel chain or if they were a gas station or, whatever department store, they always started by saying, well, you go around to a bunch of different customers. What is everybody else doing that are like us? They always wanted to not do any more or any less than the competition. And that was what they considered due diligence. But another aspect of it is, since I did deal with some companies in the mid 2000s that suffered, significant major breaches that we all know about, they never really suffered, from the perspective of lost, consumer confidence and company value. I mean, that's always part of the perception is, we don't want to be associated with a breach. It'll be bad for our image and ultimately our bottom line. But historically, at least companies in the retail world and the PCI world, with a couple exceptions, but from a merchant perspective, most companies have not suffered long-term effects in terms of recovering from a breach. I don't know if that can be said for the healthcare world. Somebody should go visit Anthem or look up Anthem and see how they're doing. It was interesting. One of the articles I was looking at that was healthcare related, they were sort of showing the number of breaches reported by year, and I'm looking at one table and everything was kind of steady, and then 2015 there was this huge spike, and I'm like, oh, that had to be Anthem, which it was. But in terms of, and I asked the question, which I think is an interesting question, is there a table somewhere that shows the number of breaches that happen in an industry, and this in particular one was healthcare, versus the ones that make it to, they're newsworthy, quote unquote, that get media attention.
Actually, my dining room table at home has the complete chart on there, Jeff.
And there's lots
Really?
of there's lots of strings attached to different pins that are pointing all over the place. Pull the right
No,
pen.
in the PCI world, we hear about the big breaches where millions and millions of cards are stolen. But if you read some of the reporting, Krebs is really good about, the fraudsters and the bad guys. They're stealing cards all the time, but they do it onesie twosie, few hundred here, a few hundred there, and lots of smaller companies are getting knocked over all the time. But those aren't newsworthy, so we don't know about it, and so we don't act upon it. Which makes me wonder out loud if something like a wall of shame is something that's, assuming that the purpose is for better security. Ultimately, is it really effective? Does it do any good?
Well, and I'll inject one of the other stories about 911. There was a story about 911 and denial of service and how many of these things get targeted. Sometimes it might be important that you know where you stand. It's like, is 911 going to be down when I call it? And the recommendation in that article was about all these ways to solve this problem for 911 services, but that's a very underfunded kind of thing that exists in most places, and everybody wants it, but nobody wants to pay for it. And when you start telling them, oh yeah, build a huge security organization to protect 911, it's like, well, we want to do that, but we may not have the budget to go out and set that up. And it might be nice to know that our 911
until it gets hacked, and then they make magically the budget becomes available.
If you know the state of whatever is got we're ranked 50th in the most likely targets, so that wall of shame may get some politicians to go, maybe we should throw some money down here and get this straightened out. Or we could build a teapot museum. There really is one of those.
Go teapots.
Yeah, it was an earmark.
Wow. The imagination never ceases
I
to
didn't
amaze
make that
me.
up. It's real. It's a famous earmark case in D.C. They tacked this whole teapot museum thing onto the back of a bill, and and they got all these millions of dollars to build a teapot museum somewhere.
Do they serve tea there? Or
I don't think they do anything there.
you
They
been there,
just-
Doug?
I missed that one when I was touring Mississippi or wherever the thing is. It's like,
You were touring in Mississippi?
no, I wasn't touring in Mississippi.
Now this is where the show really goes off the rails, Jeff.
I'm not allowed in Mississippi. So
Yeah. That's a story for another time.
There is a story there.
So I had a question from one of mine.
Go ahead, Lee.
One of the stories I found, and I don't like the FUD flavor to it, but they used the term a vapor worm as a new form of Fireless malware. And I was trying to figure out whether that was a thing or was it just baloney. I mean, I thought it was really cool that the Fireless malware is self-propagating, embeds itself as a registry key, creates another registry key that executes it and does stuff. I thought that stuff's pretty cool. But I just don't know about this term vapor worm, and I was wondering if any of you guys had heard of it. It seemed odd.
It's very odd to me. I think it's
just one of those things. It's one of those things where but it's one of those things where it assembles in memory out of pieces that come from other components. So at least that's how I heard the term used before was that it did you didn't have to download a file or anything like that. It just came in on all these other payloads, and then it assembles itself in memory, and that way it can execute, and then it can actually disappear, and you don't know what happened to it, which is why they were calling it vapor worms.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds vaguely familiar, like attacks we used to craft years ago, where you would divide up the payload over multiple packets.
Yeah,
but it just sounds vaguely familiar. My question is, and it's sort of a joke, but I'm sort of seriously asking the question: does Fireless malware, is that a unique method of attacking serverless applications?
No.
God.
You sound
If
like
a
you work
server rack falls in the forest, will Paul be there to catch it? Film at 11.
It's a new service that we're offering, Doug. I go to your data center, and when the rack falls, I'm there to catch it. And if a server falls, I can catch it with my other hand. After that, it's a denial of service attack, and everything just crashed. But I can catch one rack and one server. Okay,
And
that's my record. That's
and
the
a
record.
chainsaw, and then he juggles them, and then it really
I haven't
pays
tried
off.
anything more than that. Maybe next week on Paul's Security
After
Week.
2, you got to try 3.
It's true. This is true.
Catch one on your ankle, and
I can. I have a foot, a head. Yeah, we can. I can up my game. I can up my game. That's all I'm saying.
I'm telling you, I've seen it.
Like the most things I ever caught falling in a data center was 2. It was a rack and a server. I mean,
Which is 2 more than I ever caught.
I mean, yeah. So, but I can totally. I'm going for the Guinness Book of World Records here. Damn
I'm
it!
getting them on the phone as we speak. Boys, you got to
Let's
get
go.
down here.
Throw some shit around in the server room.
He's going for the record. Get down
Watch
here
me
fast.
catch it. Watch me catch
It's
it.
not going to last. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Now, do we officially tell the story of me in the server room catching
I don't
stuff
think
on
so.
air?
So yeah, everybody else is going, "What the hell?"
I thought you talked about it last week.
I did talk about it last week.
Yeah.
It's still burned in my. It's very. I'm
burned in
scarred.
all our memories.
I'm scarred for life from that
Yeah.
experience. To be
And
honest,
he was wearing a
with
house dress when he did it. It was like, it's like,
you. Doesn't everyone when you're working
we're
in
all
the data center?
Yeah, I do. It keeps everything nice and cool.
naked with an apron.
Yeah, there you
Actually, in data centers, it's very cold.
Ooh, a story just
Yeah,
popped
that's what
up.
they always say.
A story just popped up on my LinkedIn page that's not in the wiki, but it sounds interesting. Does
Probably
HIPAA,
more interesting than what we're talking about right now, Jeff.
Well,
So let's
I
go
think
with
it will be. Does HIPAA apply to medical marijuana?
Ooh. Wait.
Wouldn't it? I mean,
No,
it's
wait,
a prescription.
no, hold on. HIPAA is my question to that question. Is HIPAA a federal regulation?
Oh, it is.
Yes, I would
It's
say
a federal
If-
regulation.
Just plain devil's advocate here. If anyone, if it's illegal
No, you're
federally,
right. Yeah,
then
so
your
marijuana,
rights.
medical marijuana is
question
illegal
because-
federally.
Is I
well,
mean your
the question's
rights.
because marijuana is illegal at the federal level, and,
Right.
and it's only at the state level that it's legal. So our organizations that are funded and allowed to distribute marijuana at the state level, are they subject to a federal regulation? That's an interesting
That's a
question.
good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
I
had
will
some
add-
other. You know,
I
we
will
need
add
to.
this link to the wiki.
We need to get an attorney on the show. One of the things that I ask Connie in the interview that's coming up, it's a pre-recorded interview. We need a Sean Tuma or someone.
I've got one. I can get one.
I know some.
So my
lawyers.
Jeff brings up that we brought up. I thought a great question about HIPAA regulations. The other question I had was, let's say Doug is the evil hacker. Doug breaks into some kind of system or whatever and gets a huge credential dump, right? Clear text or whatever. Doug's got a whole bunch of credentials that he illegally obtained. Doug maybe posts that. Let's go with this scenario. Doug posts that to a forum that we're in, or posts a snippet of it or whatever, right? I'm in that forum. I obtain those credentials. Or maybe I buy them from Doug, and then maybe I sell them to someone else or give them to someone else. Who is in violation of which laws? I mean, Doug most likely clearly violated the CFAA when you obtained those credentials. Let's just say that could be a very clear violation. But does Doug distributing them publicly, me obtaining them publicly, whether he sells them to me or I get them publicly, am I violating a law? And then if I then give them or sell them to someone else, I haven't conceivably, let's say, I haven't violated the CFAA
yes, you
for
have.
this. Have I? But
You have.
if you posted them publicly?
No, I'm not an attorney, but listen, if you have illegal materials and you say, I obtained these illegal materials completely legally, they're still illegal materials. I mean, if we go to some island where they sell cocaine legally and I sell you stolen cocaine and you say, well, I didn't steal it, I bought it legally.
That's different. Cocaine
By
is
definition,
illegal
you
by
can't
substance.
legally
obtain
you can't
cocaine.
legally obtain something.
Cocaine's a
that's
Schedule 2?
Well,
Is it Schedule? Hold on, is cocaine Schedule 1 or Schedule 2?
I don't know.
I want to say it's Schedule 2. It is because marijuana is Schedule 1. Cocaine, I believe, is listeners will correct me. Cocaine Schedule 2. In any case, it is on the list of scheduled drugs that are illegal.
If you are in,
therefore, I'm not talking about that. Past credentials are not like cocaine. I mean, maybe to some people, credentials are like cocaine. Most people, credentials are not like cocaine.
You've acquired somebody's personal information, and I don't care if you got it from me publicly. You still acquired people's personal information that you obviously knew was illegal. I mean,
yeah, but if I find someone's cell phone on the ground and I pick it up, am I now a criminal automatically?
But the cell phone isn't illegal.
But it's got it's your personal information. Thank you, Johnny. He confirmed that cocaine is a Schedule 2.
Oh, well, now we know that.
See, now we can play trivia.
Well, get it out. Let's go. All right. Well, we're ready to party.
Is the fact that anyone knows
It's
that
Schedule 2. Paul said it was okay.
No, Schedule 2 is
the
still
fact that anybody
illegal.
knows that it's Schedule
man.
2 is that privacy information that's subject to HIPAA?
That is
why
one of
would-
the
why would
point
you
Jeff
know
is
that?
making. The point that I'm trying to make, that your phone has, in this example,
Okay.
personal information. It is
could
not
be.
cocaine. Your phone is not illegal. The information that's on it is not.
I do think it's a very valid
conceivably
question. I think it is a very
not
valid
illegal.
question.
But what if it's like Enemy of the State, where I end up with some electronic device that does have something on it that I don't know. Anyway,
Well, I will. I mean, I asked that question once to John Mellon, the great grandfather of forensics, and I said, "What if I have a hard drive that's got child pornography on it, and I'm driving around with it?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "If you acquire a brick of cocaine and put it in the trunk of your car and drive around with it, it's illegal. You're going to go to jail." So,
Right.
but this is so
but
much
those
more.
two things are illegal.
No, I know. And so
My
I don't
username
know.
and password is not an illegal substance.
Yeah,
or
I don't know. I think that would. It would.
But
This is what I'm saying. We've now got two really good, I think, issues
Yeah.
to. There's probably a third one if I thought hard enough
Well,
about
we
it. They
should
came
have
up in the past couple of weeks that I would like to.
We should have a special show called 5 Questions for the Attorney, and we should get two
Yes.
attorneys on here and let the two attorneys.
So we got
geek it
two
up.
out of the 5, and
I mean, it's
it just came up based on recent news and stuff.
I think it'd be a great show. I would like to watch that.
Yeah.
That'd be an awesome topic.
Not based on recent purchases.
No, not based on. No, definitely not. Fentanyl
There you
is scheduled too. Yes,
Okay.
but you should go. I think it's a fascinating.
They really expect
Read.
people that are like wasted to understand this stuff.
Well, no, I mean it's
Schedule 1 or Schedule 2, man.
still illegal.
It's all
believe-
illegal.
Slightly different penalties.
Is it? Okay.
I believe so.
Not in Mississippi.
Maybe. I guess that's another question. How much weight does the state carry in there? I guess so. They determine whether it's a felony or whether it's a misdemeanor
Yeah.
or whether it's a fine,
I mean,
right?
it's very complex. I mean, I think the whole thing about illegal information is really complicated, and it would be really
because
hard
it
to
could
enforce.
get down to the state
On
issue. Because like if you
Schedule
watch
1 weekly.
Yeah, well, if you so in terms of how you would prosecute this in the United States, right? In terms of having personal information, maybe I've got Rhode Island personal information and I live in some other state. When it comes down to schedules, if you watched like Live PD, right? In Texas, marijuana, highly illegal, felony.
You going to
right?
jail, boy?
Rhode Island, $200 fine under a certain amount. And you see both of those situations
Yeah.
play out. So clearly the federal government has classified that. They put laws down, Jeff, like Hipaa, right? But the states also have, well, states' rights has been an issue since the beginning, basically.
I think it would be a really tough case because I think there would be a lot of attorneys struggling with what it even means. There would be a lot of courts.
The third thing, I remember the third thing for our attorney friends is in Japan. And did we cover this last week?
Anything that starts out in Japan.
Road trip.
In Japan, they are going to scan their publicly accessible internet IP addresses in the country of Japan. They
We
are
also
going
talked
to.
about this last week.
We did talk about this last week,
Yeah.
and so the question is, what are the laws in Japan to say I can try a default password on your router? I can figure out your router's there. I can connect to your router. I can test some credentials on it. To me, those are three different things. What are the laws in Japan versus the laws in the U.S.? Also, the other interesting thing that I was speculating about was, what if I'm a U.S. company and I am doing business in Japan and I have a building and a presence in Japan, and now you're scanning my stuff, but it's owned by a U.S. corporation.
I mean, this stuff's been issues for a long time. I mean,
Right. So there's three things that I want to discuss with an attorney.
That's like talking about, did somebody look at a child pornography that was on a server in Denmark that, they were looking at it in Mexico via a VPN that had an endpoint in California. And I mean, that stuff gets so complicated that, it'll be like 100 years of legal fees before anybody ever gets a precedent on it. And
No, but in all seriousness, though, I think the analogy is closer to sort of traditional case law, which most lawyers are more comfortable with, and it has to do with questions like if you shoot somebody with the intent to kill them, but they happen to be already dead, is it murder, attempted murder, or whatever? No, I'm serious.
No, you're right.
And another example,
things.
And another example, that's closer to trying to log in or trying to use credentials would be, if you come up to a house or a residence and the door was wide open, or there is no door, and you walk in, are you guilty of trespassing, or have you violated a law by walking through an open door or not? And that's the type of case law that's been
I agree.
tried over centuries, where there is case law conclusions with a lot of caveats applied. I think those are sort of the
I agree, and I think that gets down. That starts to drill down into intent and all these other kind of things about, like, did Paul get this because it was just up on the screen? He went to a website and it said, "Here's a bunch of username."
Did I get it because I saw my credentials or my company's credentials, or a company that I'm consulting for? I saw their credentials, therefore I wanted to obtain it so that I could take corrective action.
Versus, did he contact me and say, "Can you steal these credentials from me?" I mean, there's a whole lot of granularity in there, which is very different. I mean, because you could easily just say, "I was looking to see if I was on this list."
Right.
So that's why I have this.
Reminds me of a funny story, and it wasn't funny at the time, but someone that I formerly acquainted with or worked with that will remain extremely anonymous.
Is this at that hotel outside the NSA, Jeff?
It quite possibly could be. They were working on a forensic case one time, and they were actually working for the customer was the FBI, and they were trying to find an attacker, and they were doing a bunch of investigation, and one of the things that they discovered was an FTP server, which used to be called a wares server. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that terminology, but basically a server that was found that was open and anonymous, where hacking tools and scripts and things could be uploaded that could then be downloaded against targets. My friend found this FTP server and found credentials in some logs that I think he found the credentials first and went to this FTP server, used the credentials that he had found, and was able to log on, and then was looking around at what was there to see if he could find any more evidence to hunt down the perpetrator. Lo and behold, some other section of the FBI was aware of this server and was monitoring it, saw my friend log on, and tracked them down. So my friend woke up early one morning to a knock on the door, similar to what's his name in the news last week, and basically had an FBI team, pour into his house, confiscate all of his computers and equipment.
I won't say it, but I know who you're talking about.
I don't think you do, but I'm sure it's happened more than once.
Maybe it's happened more than once.
But the irony was it was the FBI that caught him, and they thought they'd caught the bad guy because they had caught this guy using the credentials to log on and traced back his IP address and found him and thought they had caught the bad guy.
What's interesting, Jeff, is I was just telling the story earlier. I had done that and then sent the credentials to law enforcement, who then did that. And it turns out the case, and someone was asking about this in the YouTube channel. I might have told the story last week. And we're talking about the case I did in 2002, where it led to the arrest of 14 people in Italy. And I could have sworn that I remembered the person who was working for the Italian police in the forensics unit that I worked with. And when we got Dario Forte from DF Labs on an interview for PSW, and he said that he used to work in their Italian forensics division in 2002, I said, I did a case in 2002 where I actually talked to someone. I'm like, that could have been you. He's like, yeah, it could have been. So since someone was asking about it on Monday when I came into work, they were like, and I think it was like, well, maybe they didn't believe me or just wanted more information or a combination of both. I dug up my presentation from 2002 that I did at MIT Security Camp. And then I Google searched for the title of the article because my link was wrong and found the article that said, forensics investigators, did an investigation led to the arrest of 14 hackers, and Dario Forte is quoted in the article. Wow. Holy shit. Talk about going full circle. Wow. That was and the point of that story, in this respect, Jeff, was I did the same thing. I found the FTP credentials. I logged in the FTP server. I was like, wow, there's a whole lot more tools on here that do really bad things. I should talk to someone and, see if there's an investigation and at least give them what I found. Because I'm like, what I've got right now could probably get some people in some serious trouble because they had some seriously sloppy OPSEC. I mean, not really the hero there. Most people in my shoes with a certain amount of skill, if you're a sysadmin, in other words, you would have been able to do the same thing that I did. Like, it wasn't rocket science. There was a clear text file with their FTP credentials in it. Again, it wasn't rocket science. But again, Jeff, same thing could have happened to me, conceivably. Right. Maybe had I not contacted law enforcement, it would have been the other way around. They would have contacted me at 5 o'clock in the morning after they broke my door down.
Yeah.
I would say it's very possible that you should thank my friend if I ever have the occasion to introduce you to him, because this probably happened in 97 or 98. And hopefully they learn some lessons, because this guy is very private to this day. He does not want his identity revealed in any way, shape, or form. He works in the industry. I knew him from certain 3-letter agency, and it was devastating to him because of the invasion of privacy. Number one, he had all of his computers, his wife's family's computers confiscated. and took years to get it all back.
Yep.
Even though it turned out very quickly that they discovered that it was one part of the FBI, against another part of the FBI, and intercommunications in government agencies is a whole nother story. Mm-hmm. But it was a big deal for him. But hopefully there was lessons learned there, so that. But to getting back to our original point, what is the legality of finding credentials or attempting to guess credentials when you're trying to log on remotely, whether it's FTP or RDP or a website or whatever?
Yep. Anyway, we're not lawyers. We're going to go find one of our friends who are lawyers and can speak in a more authoritative manner on this. We brought up, I don't remember what they were, but we'll write them down. 3 topics. Mm-hmm. That we have that I thought. So if you are an attorney and you want to talk about those 3 topics, maybe you've been on the show before, maybe you haven't. We'll definitely
play. Should Paul go to jail?
Well, yeah. We'll turn it into a game, and we'll play. Should Paul go to jail?
Paul go to jail tonight?
I look terrible
in the morning at 5 a.m.
I don't think I'd look good in an orange jumpsuit. Just saying. That's
they have some choices in that, like the assless jumpsuits and other things that you can wear.
The vision of Paul going to jail makes me think we should close this segment.
Yes, please do. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. Doug, take us out.
February 7th, 2019, and that's the way it is. Thank you and good night. Oh, there's an interview. Don't
no, it's not over yet.
Hang on, we're not leaving yet. No.
Just kidding.
Okay, Connie, that's not the way it was. It's the way it will be.
Connie Mastovich is coming up next.
Yeah.